And so in diving into how people use architecture, I got really fascinated by the fact that, it's easy to take for granted that you're supposed to use doors to get from one room to the next. You're supposed to go down a corridor to make it through a building. You're meant to use the streets outside to get from one building to the next. But burglars find a way of deliberately avoiding doors. They'll cut a hole through a wall. They might even avoid the wall and cut a hole through the floor or the ceiling. They might avoid floors and ceilings and cut through roofs or come up from the sewer network beneath the city, in an example that I'll come back to in a few minutes. But so this relationship to architecture is one in which I suppose you could describe it almost as a kind of topological relationship, in that it's a more engaged three-dimensional interaction with architectural space than the ones that we limit ourselves to, or I'll speak for myself, the one that I limit myself to as a law-abiding user of architecture. I follow what the architects laid out for me by going through doors. I don't crawl through windows very often, and I tend not to use a concrete coring machine to get to the next floor. But this is something that burglars will do. So a couple just quick examples that I go into more length in the book. This can be either an ingenious act of almost revelatory architectural short-circuiting, such as this individual named Bill Mason, who at one point was robbing a mob-connected hotel outside Cleveland, which sounds like a good idea. And he wanted to get into the cash room, but it was heavily guarded. So he had the realization that the way the hotel was built, he could in fact just break into the hotel room next to the office, go into the closet, cut a hole through the drywall. No one's, they're not protecting the walls from within. Go into the cash room, steal whatever he wanted to, and then leave out of a door of his own making, as he referred to it, like a kind of pop-up entryway through the world of architecture. Those examples are obviously there are many examples like that in the world of architecture as the book goes into, or the world of burglary. But then on the flip side of that, there are people who, in trying to second guess architecture, it doesn't go quite as well. So one example was this kid who I still kind of feel bad for, but in the city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, decided in the middle of the night to break into a veterinarian's office. But instead of going through the front door, which would have been too easy, or even going through the window, which made too much sense, he went up to the roof, cut a hole into the HVAC system, and then proceeded to remove all of his clothing, I think under the impression that would reduce friction, and slip into the air conditioning duct in order to get some painkillers down below. But in this kind of, in the book I compare it to a surreal nudist remake of Die Hard. In his nudity, he got trapped. He had a flashlight in one hand and a hammer in the other. And in trying to get out of the air duct, I was making so much noise that when the people showed up 6 or 7 hours later, they actually thought an animal had been trapped inside the air duct, and he had to be removed by the fire department. But so those kinds of examples are pretty shockingly common. You find that burglars, in trying to rethink the notion of a getaway, there's one great example in New Zealand where somebody broke into a house and then tried to get away by actually going further into the house. So he crawled up into the ceiling, and then somewhat incredibly, his toe was sticking out of the ceiling insulation, and the police spotted this body part from nowhere coming down from the ceiling tiles and pulled him down and arrested him. There are a lot of examples of people trying to hide inside walls to get away, to cut their way deeper and deeper into buildings and have to call 911 themselves in order to get out. So what I'm getting at is that for every intelligent or exciting misuse of architecture, there are these weird sort of dead-end misuses of architecture that don't quite go as planned.